Dave, you and I have had more nuanced conversations about this topic we're about to have with the world than I believe any other conversation we've ever had.
Probably.
Jalen Hurts and how talented is he and
Way to
why
set us
he
up
has
to not
critics.
sound like haters. I appreciate that. Yeah.
You go first. What can Jalen Hurts do to silence the critics in the Super Bowl?
I mean, at this point, if you're criticizing Jalen Hurts, you're nitpicking a little bit, right? Like that's like Jalen Hurts he's a second-team All-Pro, but he is going to have critics by virtue of the fact that we know he's not doing this all himself, right? We know what he looked like last year before the Eagles leveled up their offense, and we know what he looks like now that he's got two of the best receivers, the best offensive line. It is what it is. And it adds fuel to that fire when you see what the Eagles have looked like during their trip through the playoffs. Blowing out two teams. Jalen Hurts, 137 yards per game. His third lowest quarterback rating of the year was in the NFC Championship game. He didn't need to do a whole lot. That if that sounds unfair, I'm sorry. It's just true. Shady, you blew my mind the day after that game because we agreed. We were like, man, Jalen didn't have the hugest role in that win. He didn't need to. It's still true.
He didn't play well. That's also objectively true. He didn't play well.
When I see all of that, and we know that people are going to criticize regardless, I think Jalen Hurts needs to be a part of the reason why they win this game. He can't be a passive participant. He can't be like, man, the Eagles threw for 105 yards, but they still won because of this, that, and the other. I think when you're talking about the money that'll be involved in his extension, which has to come sooner because he's not a first-round pick, and when you talk about it gets harder to afford a good team when your quarterback is accounting for a certain amount of cap space, that's the stuff you have to consider. I think the Eagles want to have confidence that Jalen Hurts can be a part of the reason that they win when their roster's not this good. And I think if he's not, critics are going to have something to say about it. So he doesn't need to be the MVP of this game. He doesn't need to play the game of his life. But I do think people will have something to say if he doesn't play well. Did I sound like a hater there?
No, not okay. I thought so. Did a good job at it, too. You hate very well.
Joy, silence critics. What's Hurts need to do?
I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking, like, who could be 14-1 as a starter this year? Like, if Justin Herbert was 14-1 as a starter this year, it was an All-Pro and an MVP final.
I'll get to that. I will get to that.
Yeah,
They call him Brady.
I hear you.
They call him Brady.
If Burrow did that, if Trevor Lawrence did that, who else?
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen. There wouldn't be no conversation about if he had done enough this year to prove that he's a franchise quarterback. Personally, I don't understand it. But it is out there that people don't think that Jalen Hurts is a franchise quarterback. All-Pro, that's hard to do.
Extremely.
Very.
MVP finalist, 14-1. I mean, really great numbers this year. I fundamentally don't get it, but because I don't get it, because I don't see it, I think he's going to have to play an unbelievable game. Because I'm not offended by the fact that he didn't have the best game in the NFC Championship game. Okay, did he need to? No. Every one of these games is a different story. Joe Burrow didn't have a great game against the Ravens.
He didn't.
Okay. Do we think Joe Burrow is a buster? No. I hope not.
No, not at all.
So, like, and obviously everybody has different resumes and all that, but to me, like, I'm not seeing it. And particularly because I saw the two games this year that the Eagles roster had without Jalen Hurts. And in my opinion, they were both awful. I know everyone keeps talking about this Dallas game. They turned the ball over 4 times. I don't understand it. I mean, to me, that's outrageous. That's an outrageous amount of turnovers. But again, just didn't, this Gardner Minshew's fine. So, I don't know. I'm seeing something else. So because of that, I think he'll have to play some unbelievable game and have this incredible performance in order to convince people that he's really as good as I think he is.
Here's what I think it comes down to. I think more than Jalen Hurts winning, I think more than a Super Bowl MVP, I think Jalen Hurts has to be impressive, not statistically, physically. You brought up a great name in Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert is impressive. He'll make a throw that everybody's like, yo, nobody else could make that. Maybe 3 other people could make that. Jalen Hurts doesn't necessarily do things during the course of the game that you're like, nobody else could do. And I think that's the dilemma he falls under. Now, Jalen Hurts should not care because he's in the Super Bowl. Favorite to win a Super Bowl. So I don't care if it matters that he's doing things that nobody else can do. But as I sat back and thought about where does the criticism come from, I think that's what it stems from. We've been talking about basketball a lot in this show, so I'll bring up the parallel. Giannis Antetokounmpo. NBA players alike will be like, Giannis ain't that impressive. He's just big, dribbles, runs over people. He plays football on the basketball court. Now, at the point at which Giannis is dropping 50 and 20 in Game 6 to win his first NBA championship along with the Finals MVP, I don't think it matters. But he's still getting criticized. Whereas people look at Kyrie or people look at Steph and say, oh, my God, what they do is so much more impressive. I think that is what Hurts falls under. Statistically, I think Hurts is impressive. But it's not as though Jalen Hurts is the greatest, most dynamic runner. And it's not as though Jalen Hurts is the greatest or most dynamic passer. And I think that is what people default to when they're like, Hurts isn't that impressive, as opposed to Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. I think that is what the issue is. But 2-5, what do you think? I
don't know. I don't hear these critics, right? Maybe earlier in the year, but I mean, when the guy was 42-1 as a starter, he was favored for MVP. In weeks, 14, 15? He was, until he got hurt, he was favored.
He was up there.
So, I guess I heard the critics earlier, but who's he got to silence now? And before I get deep into it, I want to ask you one question. You said that if he only has 100-something yards, that they might not pay him. Is that
No. Not that the Eagles might not pay him, but again, in this conversation about a quarterback's abilities, I think there will be people who have something to say about that. And I think that could, and again, this is what I was going to say is, in these conversations, for right or for wrong, I think this conversation gets brought up out of an underlying paranoia. That is basically, will this guy still be a good quarterback when we can't afford to keep good pieces around him?
I just asked you one you don't take over my whole.
Sorry about that.
That part really don't matter. I'm going to tell you the truth.
Fair.
If he goes out there and throws for 125 yards and we win the game and the Super Bowl champion, for the next 4 years, 5 years, now we want to win now, but you can that, right? It's all about what you've done for me lately, right now. So if we get a championship, they give you some space for a year or two to not be what you once wasn't or was.
Not very long, though.
I mean, well, that's cool. It's hard to win these championships.
It is.
It's hard to win these championships. Well, he chose to leave. He chose to leave. Another thing about Jalen Hurts, because I hear this all the time, he doesn't wow you. But he wins. So maybe he doesn't throw the ball like Justin Herbert or he doesn't run like Lamar Jackson. He does well enough for our scheme.
That's what it comes down to.
I agree with that.
And that's all that matters. So it's like when we talk about size and critics, I can't really take the critics serious.
Fair.
Because you arguing with a guy that's lost only one game.
And if you don't want to, I don't think you have to.
But also...
And he was all pro. It's hard to do.
Even if you don't think he does anything spectacular, he doesn't turn the ball over.
Right.
And... do we allow players to get better? Can he get better than he was last year?
Sure.
They brought in some players to help him. Yeah, okay, they did. They did bring in players, and they've been great. But could he have gotten better too? Could he have improved? Could he have gotten bigger or faster or stronger? He looks bigger. He looks better to me. So maybe he's not the same player he was the year before, which we also seem to just don't not we.
They don't care about
critics
that.
don't seem to have space for that. Upgrade.
Right.
Click. The Madden rating went up.
Players evolve.
You got to upgrade your view of someone. He's better than he was last year. And some of that is because he has better pieces around him, but also it's also because of him, because we saw what those better pieces look like with a lesser quarterback.
It all kicks off Super Bowl Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox.
Subscribe here to get the latest from Speak, and go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.